I'm Dawn Upton and I'll be your host for this session. And today we have the esteemed Nick Myers joining us from multi-award winning Zellis, the largest payroll and HR business in the UK, who boast a third of the FTSE 100 as their clients. Nick is a highly engaged marketing professional with a passion for business, politics, communication and technology. Nick describes himself as a dynamic marketer and has a wealth of experience across the discipline, from strategy and brand management to tactical execution and communications. Commercially astute and creative, Nick's specialities include leadership, account-based marketing, branding, CRM and data management, inbound marketing, marketing operations and tech, data and analytics, SEO, website management, and PPC, and there's loads more. The list goes on and on, doesn't it, Nick? You've got so much experience, particularly across digital.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the very complimentary introduction there. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here. So, Nick, let's get sort of straight to it. Can you tell us a bit more about Zellis, please, and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I head up the marketing operations side of Zellis, and was primarily responsible for looking after the tech stack, data integration, CRM, website, all of the above. And in terms of Zellis itself, so we are one of the leading companies in the UK for UK and payroll. We specialize in the 1,000 plus employee space, so the mid to enterprise sort of levels of companies. We're industry agnostic, so we don't sort of specialize in a particular industry. We sort of serve them all with our award-winning software. We're very lucky. We boast some of the UK's largest manufacturers, retailers, financial services. We have a very enviable client base. And we look to serve them with great employee experiences, with great payroll software that's accurate, that's on time, that's and support them with a range of benefits and well-being service and all the other stuff that wraps around that sort of HR and payroll space. And as you can see from the slides, the numbers speak for themselves. So we pay around 1 in 6 people in the UK through our managed services, our payroll offering. So many of the people listening to this webinar probably at some point been paid through Zellis' services at some point or another. So yeah.
That's great. And I mean, obviously you sort of mentioned the logos, and it is a very impressive list. So can you tell us a bit more about your ideal customer profile? So I know you said you serve kind of the various range of industries and that sort of size. How do you decide who your ICP are?
Yeah, we did a lot of research, as you'd expect from a marketing team on this, and I think quite frankly, our software is quite comprehensive and very customizable, and so it allows us to deal with highly complex payroll needs and requirements. So it's particularly very useful for larger businesses where they have those needs and requirements, or for organizations that have shift work, shift pay, where they need to make sure that they're adhering to national minimum wage, that they're not breaching any legislation, whatever. So our software is 100% compliant, so people lean on that to serve them. So we particularly serve that space, and we have a sort of sister company, MorePay, who would look after sort of the 1,000 sub employee space, where perhaps the needs and requirements aren't as complex, but they still want the best in class services that we offer. So in terms of the ideal customer profile, it's any business that sort of has that larger employee base, that's looking for flexible, customizable pay solutions, and the user experience that comes with it through the self-service offerings of our app and other stuff.
And the reason I sort of asking these questions, in case anyone's wondering, is obviously knowing who your ideal customer profile is so important when it comes to thinking about personalization on a website. So, and with that in mind, I'm about to launch a poll to ask you, the attendees, if you have a clear ideal customer profile and know the size of your total addressable market, because I think that makes a really big difference, doesn't it, to kind of when you start thinking about, right, who am I going to personalize to first, what sort of content, what sort of information am I going to display to them. It's really important. So with I think everyone's that was quite a quick poll, because everyone's come back already, so that's great. So one more give it a few more seconds.
Yeah, while people are filling that in, I think what I would say is that obviously we have quite a broad basis that we start with, right? So industry agnostic UK and Ireland 1,000+ is quite broad. What we do have is a lot of data and research to suggest who is our ideal sort of industry target, who's has a higher propensity to buy, who's more likely to partner with and succeed with Zellis, etc. So we do have a lot of that stuff, and we obviously do a lot of work into the total addressable market and understanding what that looks like. And one of the things that we go on to, no doubt, is that Webio helps us to work out some of that and leverage some of that effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've ended the poll, and I'm just going to share the results. So you can see that 50% of attendees know their ICP, but not their total addressable market. So that's really thinking about, okay, so getting data counts for that, you know, what your ICP looks like, and then finding out how many businesses are in that space. So you really know what your potential is in terms of the market size. 25% know both. That's brilliant. And we've got, you know, a couple of, so 13% know who their TAM is, and sort of 13% don't know either. So that's fine. It's we're quite keen to kind of just get a grasp of where everyone on the call is in terms of how they kind of identify and use that information for their kind of marketing activity. So I think that leads us quite nicely then on to the next slide, which is, you know, thinking about, you know, that sort of the main challenge you had, Nick, and why you kind of started using Webio in the first place. So, you know, that location-based content that we were talking about for Ireland. I know you've been serving the Irish market for over 50 years, but you had some new challenges you were facing with that. So if you can sort of tell us a bit more about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So back in 2018, we were we were known as NGA Human Resources. We were part of a global entity that served payroll and software across the world. The UK and Ireland entity website for Ireland and the UK to having just one that served everybody. The reasons that we did that were resource related, timing, a whole number of factors. What we found was that it took a lot of time and effort to maintain two separate websites, to keep the content unique and different so that we didn't hit sort of SEO cannibalization issues or whatever. We had problems there. And we also found that in reality, actually, a lot of the pain points that our customers and prospects experience are the same regardless of the geographies. There's just some nuances in how we need to talk and address those markets. And so, for example, you know, in our space, people want to be paid on time. They want their employees to have the best possible user experience. They want to improve employee engagement, retention with great benefits. These are the sort of challenges. They're not so unique to us. They're shared across Ireland and the UK. What we did, however, find was that certain aspects didn't really work for us. So, for example, if you're talking to a payroll professional in the UK, you're talking about things like the HMRC, whereas in Ireland you have revenue, which is the equivalent body. And so we found that you have to talk the right language to really speak to that audience. And this came to light during COVID for us. So this was the big kind of thing. So if you cast your minds back to that time, the change in legislation, the constant updates of are we in lockdown, are we not in lockdown, the introduction of furlough, we had, I think, during that period over 1 million visits to the website. The vast majority were other companies looking for help, advice, guidance, trying to translate the government's messaging into practical, actionable things that they need to do to make sure people are paid accurately and that they understand the schemes that are put in place. And what we found was in the UK, we had things like the coronavirus job retention scheme, furlough, job retention bonuses, statutory sick pay changes. Whereas in Ireland, we had the Department of Employment Affairs and Social Protection were announcing things like illness benefits, temporary wage subsidies, employment wage subsidies, and they were completely different things. And we was trying to serve everything all in one go on one page, and people having to work out what suits them and their needs and whatever. And we just realized that it wasn't the greatest experience to the end user and that we needed to do better. And so that's why we sort of originally sort of came on board with Webio, was to leverage website personalization to achieve that end.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, as you say, that was the goal when you kind of came across to us. Really, it was to focus on that accelerating the Irish customer and prospect base. And that there was almost like a single use case, wasn't it? That was a single focus at that time. So I've got a slide here which shows the homepage of the Zellis website. On the left is the kind of standard homepage, and then on the right is an example of the personalised version that Zellis used for Ireland. So they use location-based personalisation to identify when someone's visiting their website from Ireland, so they can present the most relevant content. So Nick, can you talk us through some of those changes that you've made, please, on that page?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think initially we sort of started off with what can we do that's quick and easy, right? So on low resource, low time, low effort, what can we make small changes that have big impacts? So we started with things like logos, making sure that people understood that we work with companies that they're familiar with in Ireland, that they know that they're household names. We focused on stats that were relevant to the Irish sector, so updating some of those metrics so that they were relevant. One of the things that we were quite keen to do is because we had transformed from NGA to Zellis, we found that the Zellis name had quite low brand awareness and salience in the Irish space. Not a lot of people knew who we were, what we did, or attributed us to NGA. And we had numerous ways of addressing that, but one was with the personalization on the website and things like the video that you can see on there, which talks to our 50-year history in Ireland and how we've served customers in that space over that length of time. And so some of it's really subtle, some of it's language changes on the introduction. What we also did at this point when we first started Customize, we also had some print work that we was doing, some advertisement in local press, etc. And we tried to tie it all in, and we're specifically pushing our managed servicing offering. So what we also did at the time was rearrange the menu items and reorder the content to push that managed service in messaging up and higher, make it far more prominent. So yeah, I think it started off with light changes and then became, to some degree on some of the pages, changing entire blocks of content to make it completely relevant.
Yeah, and I've just sort of switched onto the managed payroll services pages. And what's really important is we always say to our customers, don't just personalize the homepage, because people don't just go to the homepage and then convert. Like, the B2B buying cycle is complex, so they're going to have a look around. So there's little value in just personalizing that homepage, and then everything else they look at is the generic experience. So what Zellis have done is on this particular experience, they personalize minimum 4 pages, which is what we advise from best practice perspective. And they've used our team of CRO experts. They help identify the best pages to personalize for a specific audience. So which pages have the highest intent? And obviously, as you say, Nick, you were running a campaign for this particular product, so absolutely makes sense that you would then personalize this page. You also, I think one of the pages you also have personalized for this experience is the contact page. Like, so if someone's going to make an inquiry, and rather than it being your UK head office or contact details, obviously it's directing the inquiry to the Ireland office as well. So on some pages it's lots of changes. Like on this one, you can see there's multiple changes been made, specifically around headlines, reinforcing it with the copy, with the stats, with the logos, things like that. And then on some other pages, it really is quite light, isn't it? Where, it's contact these people, they'll be able to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we leveraged sort of the expertise of Lisa, our customer success manager, who I think is fantastic, by the way. And sort of she took that initial view of, look, Zellis just want to achieve delivering unique content to Ireland in an easy to manage way, and she translated that into, well, actually the best way of doing this is actually to personalize other areas of the site and carry that personalization throughout the site. And like you said, some of it's light touch and some of it's more in depth. And I think what we've ended up with now is a site that's heavily personalized for Ireland. We've gone as far as changing the development of the website. So when we do blogging, any blogs related to Ireland get a specific tag in the back end, and we can surface that up through Webio to only show blogs that relate to Ireland. So we're not talking about, the latest announcements from the government on financial matters or whatever that don't relate to the Irish sector, etc. So yeah, we find that all plays out on the site. So yeah, I think I think the thing for me is Lisa in particular has taken our initial aims and realized that we only scratched the surface. And I'm sure we'll come on to talk about the other things that we've done with Webio, but our initial aspirations were quite quickly achieved, and then we realized we could do so much more. And that's why I think we are where we are. And I think that anyone listening to this call that's thinking about doing something like this, I think the initial thing that's probably going through their mind is, man, this is probably a lot of work. This is probably to go through page by page and change everything is a lot of work. And trust us when I say that the resource we have available to do something like this in Zellis is quite light. And the reality is not that you need to change every single thing. Start with the quick wins, start with the things that's easy, things like logos, case studies, reference points, CTAs, blogs. Start with your contact pages, start with the things that's quick and easy, and the results come very quickly, and that justifies spending a bit more time doing it. And you just evolve as you go. And that's what we've done in partnership with you guys over the last few years, is to work on evolving this constantly to just improve and get those marginal gains along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So that takes us on to the next slide, which, Ireland aside, as you said, Lisa was like, come on, you can do so much more with this. There's other things you can use Webio for other than this location-based personalization. So this experience we're showing now, this is for the homepage, sort of main homepage of the site versus an industry personalization. And I know that you have a number of industries on the top navigation that you can kind of find out, you can use that top nav to find the relevant information for. But obviously what you've also done is create these experiences so that it's presented to your visitor from the moment they kind of come on the site from the first visit. So, what made you kind of decide that this would be a good kind of next step with Webio?
Yeah, so it comes back to the ICP point, right? So our research showed that whilst we serve everyone that meets that sort of an initial demographic, that actually there are certain industries and sectors where we perform best, and that our customers have the best results, and that we are actually doing really well in. And I think we realized that there's quite in our space, there's quite a lot of nuance in the different features and benefits that matter more to those industries. So for example, if you're in the retail space, the ability to handle shift work or different working patterns and environments, different pay requests. So one of the things that we've recently launched is the ability for sort of as part of a financial well-being suite, is the ability to sort of draw down your pay as you earn. And that incentivizes people to sign up for jobs and take on extra works and shifts and support some of those industries support some of those businesses in the retail space. And so that's messaging that we want to make more prominent than perhaps something else relating to another industry. And so I think we very quickly realized that actually we should go further with it, and we should start looking at the industry messaging and how we present that on the page. And one of the things that's really great about Webio is in the back end, it gives us an idea of who's visiting the website from what industries and who it sees as the most sort of engaged industries on the site. And we can use that sort of help inform what we should be doing next and who we should be speaking to and personalizing to next. And so we're kind of using our own data and research that we've got at Zellis paired with the Webio backend analytics to kind of work out what we should be doing and what areas we should be focusing on.
Yeah, and sort of as we sort of mentioned earlier, whilst best practice sort of dictates, we recommend that you personalise for a minimum of 4 pages across an experience. On this one, you've actually got 8 pages sort of updated and personalised. Excuse me. And you know, again, it doesn't. We don't want to scare anyone off by saying there's 8 pages. But actually think about those different sectors, and as you said, the retail sector, there's so much kind of information that is relevant only to them, that isn't relevant to other sectors. And so, you know, from a conversion perspective, it has an impact. It's you know, when prospects find it easy to find the information that's relevant to them, they hang around for longer. They keep looking, they engage more, they go across more sites, and so more pages. And so you know, I find it really interesting there's 8 pages, because I imagine it's grown and growing, where you've gone, actually we can add to this, they're now looking at this page and this page because they're spending longer on the site and they're not bouncing because the information is easier to find. And I know that you know, this experience has sort of generated an increase in conversion for you, a 22% increase, you know, across those different industries. But what I find really interesting, like using our experimentation module for this, which I think is like so important. So we have, you know, we give our customers the ability to test and look at personalization versus non-personalization. And if I make these changes, what impact does it have on my conversion rates? And if I make this tweak, is it going to make it work more effectively, or does that tweak actually have a negative effect? Like, we are constantly encouraging our customers to experiment with personalization and to try different things, because from a CRO perspective, you know, that's how you make the big differences, right? So, you know, it's really important to do that testing, particularly for different industries. I imagine, Nick, that some stuff has worked well for some industries and hasn't for others, and vice versa. So it really is kind of constantly learning and letting the data tell you and inform you what to do next.
Yeah, I think as marketers, right, that's what we should be doing always, right, is letting the data inform those decisions and what we do. I think for us, I think going back to sort of the reason why we looked at the industry thing, what we saw when we did the Ireland piece was that we was expecting maybe a slight improvement here or whatever, but actually we weren't really looking for any sort of meaningful uplift in terms of conversion rates. We literally just wanted to make sure that we served content that was relevant to that audience and we hid the stuff that didn't matter. That was kind of our initial focus. What we actually saw in the stats was that bounce rates improved, click-throughs improved, the time on page improved, number of pages viewed. Every single metric we saw when we personalized that journey in Ireland gave us better outputs and better metrics. And so for us, it then becomes a non-brainer taking that forward and applying it to other things. It's just how far and how fast we could go at the time. And that's why we're kind of scaling it, and it's growing as we grow and we're evolving it as we go. But I think the industry piece is something that we're really focused on at the moment, and we're doing, and we're seeing, like you said, using that experimentation tool to see what works, what doesn't, how best to optimize. And when we get it right, we clone and replicate that approach to the other industry pages, and we're constantly refining. And yeah, we're now looking at what we can do beyond this. So our next sort of area is the ABM stuff, right? So delivering personalized pages to specific target customers that are completely customized to them. We're looking at integrating HubSpot into the back end so we can serve specific audiences with personalization if we've already identified them in our system. So there's loads of really cool things that we can do, which we've not even scratched the surface of yet, that we're really excited about working with you guys on.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. It's exciting times. I mean, the next slide I've got is for the PPC activity. So again, you know, another exciting channel to kind of focus on. And I know that, you know, you're invested in PPC kind of activity and looking at the impact that personalization has on a PPC audience. So, you know, it's very similar to the experience we just looked at, but again, looking at that impact it has when you're driving PPC traffic to, you know, a personalized experience. Again, this one has 8 pages, and, you know, as we just said, that's not scary. Some pages will have more personalizations than others, and sometimes it's quite light, but it definitely has an impact, because this particular campaign has tripled the conversion on the PPC activity from an industry perspective. So really impactful. And again, using the experimentation module, so lots of great testing and learning to be done there. So that's really positive. And talking about additional use cases and how it just started off focusing on Ireland, and now it's like growing and growing and growing, and there's all these other kind of channels you're looking at. I just wanted to put a bit of a spotlight on PPC, because quite often I do talk about PPC traffic in these sessions, and I always talk about how it's high intent traffic that you're paying for. You paid for 100% of that traffic to come to the website, and actually, as marketers, we're sort of accustomed to quite a low conversion rate when it comes to PPC and conversion rate in general. So industry average conversion rate sits at around 2%, and as the B2B buying cycle gets more and more complex, that's becoming even harder to achieve. And from a PPC perspective, that sort of single landing page just doesn't cut it anymore. People are going from that landing page, looking around the website, trying to find out more information. There's so many more decision makers now in the buying cycle, in that decision process, and we need to make it easy for them to find the relevant information. So what I wanted to do today actually was just really quickly flag what the investment looks like for a lot of businesses for PPC, because it's one of the channels that a lot of businesses invest quite heavily in, but it's converting at a pretty low rate when you consider all of the traffic that's going there you paid for, and so why wouldn't you want to make the most of that? So depending on the company size, we're looking at startups up to $1,000 a month, small businesses up to 10,000, mid-sized businesses between 10,000 and 500,000, and enterprise. Wow, wouldn't I love that budget? Really like huge budgets being spent on this, and these are obviously average, and I know it's going to vary from business to business, but it's just I just think it's crazy that we're then sort of in a lot of instances sending this traffic to a landing page with a generic message, was probably personalized to the keyword that they've searched for, but then where do they go from there? Like back to the generic site with this kind of non-personalized experience. So just a bit of food for thought there in terms of investments. And actually, I've got another poll that I'd like to share, just to kind of see in terms of the attendees, how much people are spending on PPC. And don't worry, it's anonymous. I won't be able to track you back to the answer. But yeah, I'm just sort of quite keen to know what that looks like in terms of attendees on here, because it's just fascinating. And just while we're waiting for that sort of poll to sort of finish, it's quite interesting in terms of the actual sort of average cost per click. It's around $2.59 per average cost per click as well. So for everyone clicking on your ad, again, that's what's driving the spend up. So really, really interesting. So we've got, I'm just going to end the poll, and there's a few people on the session actually. They're not actually investing in PPC at the moment, so that's fine. Obviously something to consider if you do start to invest in paid search, and then a few other attendees sort of more at the bottom end of the scale in terms of investment. So really interesting, and it's one of those channels, isn't it? Like you have to kind of go hard with it to get a result. So yeah, really interesting in terms of how people are divvying up their marketing budget.
It comes back to marginal gains, doesn't it? Again, it comes back to that thing that you would go into PPC optimizing your landing page for the ad copy and the ad words, and make sure that you're getting the best cost, you're getting the best sort of bid price and etc. But actually, this is something very small that you can do that adds a multiplier effect and makes it more beneficial, more valuable. So you're getting more bang for that buck because you're keeping people on page longer, you're serving them more relevant content, you're customizing that experience even more beyond just does it match the copy that you've written in the ad? It takes to the next level.
Absolutely. And I think that's the key thing, isn't it? Website personalization. You can use it across all your marketing activity. It's not specific for one channel. Once you've invested in that solution, it can enhance and increase the conversion across everything that you're doing. So it's quite nicely to the next slide, Nick. What's the impact for you in terms of personalization?
So I think for us, we're now able to serve up unique content to audiences really quickly and create a bespoke, tailored journey for our customers and prospects. So I think for us, the starting point is always a better experience. That's the first and foremost. But in reality, the impact has been better engagement across all the sort of key web metrics that we would track, a higher conversion rate amongst our target customers and target prospects specifically. I think it's done with very little impact or drain on our time as a company, and we can go as hard or as light as we wish, and we can control that, and we can work with you guys on that. And I think for us, the impact has been huge, right? And like I said, I'm really excited about where we go next and what we do next. And I think that we're constantly getting more and more sophisticated with it as we read the data, as we learn what it's doing. And we're now toying with all sorts of things. So changing out more content, more video, more image changes across the site, changing entire headings and stuff like that, changing out the menu and where it points you to go next. We're trying all sorts of things. I think one of the things that we're really keen to explore is the retargeting piece. So what happens, and this is something that I think is going to be really valuable to us as a business, is in our space, the buying cycle can be over a year long. Often people don't want to change their payroll solutions that often because of any risks that might be involved. So it's sort of a 5, 6, 7 year buying cycle before they buy again. And so sometimes we just want to make sure that the early on in the buying process, they're just looking for discovery, just looking for information, just seeing who we are. And it's what do we serve them up when they come back the second, the third, the fourth time? How do we optimize it based on what they've done, what they've seen, who they are, etc., what industry they're in, the location they are, and serve up that more unique journey. And so for us, the impact already is huge. I think where it goes next is something that we're really excited about.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. Yeah, I can't wait to see what you do next, to be honest, because it's been, it's been a really interesting journey, hasn't it, from that single use case at the outset, and then how it's kind of evolved over time. So I think it really is a case of watch this space, isn't it, with you and personalization.
Absolutely.
So we're going to move on to questions now. So if anyone, any of the attendees, you've got any questions, put them in the chat or send them over, either just so I can see them or everyone. It's up to you. We're sort of running a little bit over, but we've got hopefully time to answer a couple of quick questions. So Nick, I've already got one here that's come through earlier, and it's you touched on it earlier with your ABM plans, and the question is, how would you use website personalization for ABM?
Yeah, great. So we're very early in that journey at Zellis, but what we have is a group of sort of super targeted prospects that we're going through, and we're doing a multi-touch engagement with them. So it involves things like sending them branded merch. It involves sending them unique information, links, etc. And fundamentally, all of those things will ultimately drive them to the website at some point or another. And when they arrive there, we want to make sure that it addresses them, their name, their sector, it talks to their challenges, their industry needs, even mentions their company and how we can help specifically. And we're putting a lot of time and effort and research into what that looks like and how we serve that up and what we say there. But what it allows us to do is very granularly target that web experience to just an individual or a group of individuals. That can be the different personas. So if you're the finance manager, you might see something different to the head of HR who might be visiting the site, etc. So it's allowing us to really sort of granularly target what they see on that site and link it to what we're sending them out in the post, or we're doing when we see them at events or roundtables or whatever that might be.
Yeah, no, that's great. So it's like a one-to-one ABM experience, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Specific audience and the decision makers within that company. I've got a question come through. Other than personalization, what else have you done to increase website conversion and engagement on your website?
Great question. So we're constantly looking at, so we use heat mapping tools. We use tools like Hotjar to understand what people are doing, how they're doing it, what their experience is on the site. We use obviously Google Analytics to understand the journeys that people take, and we're constantly optimizing for that, whether it be changing the order of content around, changing out what we're doing, and how we're presenting. I think we are obviously using your experimentation tools to help us to work out what's working and what's not. I think that's key, and some of it is trial and error, and see if it makes a difference and moves the needle. We're constantly just looking at how we can make the website experience better, and we're constantly getting feedback from customers, from prospects, from people internally to sort of help guide that. And we're constantly looking at the data to sort of understand what's working and what's not. But yeah, I think for us, the website personalization is probably the single biggest thing that we're doing to optimize the customer experience.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, unfortunately, we have not just run out of time, we've run over. So I am going to end the session there because I appreciate everyone is super busy and I don't want to eat into the rest of your afternoon. So Nick, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great talking to you and sharing your experience and your journey. And as I said earlier, I can't wait to see what you do next, because I just love how you're constantly looking at additional use cases and further ways to kind of extend that personalization across the site for the various audiences and channels that you're using. So thank you so much, and really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for joining. We hope it's been informative. If you've got any questions that you want to raise, we didn't have time for, drop me an email or put a note on the chat as you're leaving the session. I'm happy to come back to you all sort of individually, and I'll send the recording out as well. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, thank you. Bye.